Okay, everyone, this is my spoiler review of The Curse, Episode 1, Land of Enchantment. This was written by Nathan Fielder and Benny Safdie, and it was directed by Nathan Fielder, so it's cool to see him directing a show like this. Make sure to hit that sub button before I jump into this review so you don't miss one of my reviews of The Curse. I'll be doing every episode each week. Now, there is so much love about this premiere and so much to break down and how brilliant this show is and how funny this show is already, but I love that it opens looking at this shot through the window of this character of Fernando, and he can't get work now with a mom who has cancer. Now you're seeing it's this very dramatic tone, but it immediately switches, of course, when you see someone like Nathan Fielder sitting next to an Emma Stone, and we meet Asher and Whitney Siegel, who are the hosts of this show that's like an HGTV show. And you see how they brilliantly introduce Dougie, who's played by Benny Safdie himself, and he's the director of this, and they introduce him by showing Asher reacting, saying Jesus, when Fernando explains how long he's been out of work, and he looks up at a cross, and that's when he's like, cut it out. But Dougie's like, no, you're fine, you're good. Because what they're establishing this whole episode is Dougie, like most directors of reality TV and producers, want whatever's going to really sell and make this thing interesting, no matter who it makes look bad. So he, this whole time, is videotaping their life, and he wants to get whatever's on there that's interesting, so he's sneakily trying to record them as the episode goes on. Now, the cringe humor really starts to begin. Uncomfortableness happens when Dougie is encouraging the mom to have a happier response and decides to want to put water in her eyes, and he goes so far to actually use menthol on her. Now, this also sets up, it's very subtle in this scene, but throughout the episode will happen where a lot of what Asher's doing that is more of a good thing is because Whitney is pushing him to do it. He's just doing it for Whitney. So you'll see the look she gives him is when he gets up to Dougie and is like, hey, I don't know about this. She's dying. And Dougie's like, I know, it's sad. But like, see how quickly he shrugs something like that off. And that's where Asher will tell Whitney, oh, it's just standard protocol. He's just making this up. Asher lies to Whitney constantly throughout this episode. And that's why it's important that after the menthol blowing into the woman's face happens, it zooms in on Whitney's reaction and the difference of a Whitney compared to an Asher, and that she can recognize these things that are deemed really bad and wrongdoings that Asher is just all over the place about and doesn't see it. Asher is a complete sociopath. And we'll see that Whitney then freaks out about it outside. And one of the funniest lines in the episode is when Asher's like, we have to trust he knows what he's doing. HGTV trusts him. We trust HGTV. Such a Nathan Fielder type line. So we'll learn that they're doing the show to help the people of Espanola. And we first see Whitney's invisible home that she's proud of. It preserves and uses energy. It's a passive home, she says, and can't have a fireplace. But this one, Asher says, you don't get much heat, but it looks great. And you see he always says the wrong thing to make them look bad and loses his control later on, which we'll get to. But you see Whitney's reaction is great, and Emma Stone is just an incredible actress. And I love when they're getting interviewed by this reporter. We learn the title of the show is Flipanthropy. Now, the interviewer strikes a nerve with both of them when she brings up Whitney's parents and their affordable housing and the bad reputation it has, that it's hell on earth, and that people call the parents slumlords. Now, what I loved how this scene was written and filmed was that it's taking the time to show you that Asher is saying all the stuff that sounds good off of memorization. He's doing this off of a script, and that's why Whitney is just looking at him like confirming he's getting it right. And he actually, props Nathan Fielder pulling off the scene so well acting wise, will pause and stop and think about what to say next from script, not from actual thought and heart. When he gets off script is when he's mad and he loses his cool, and it's a bad look. Whitney knows it. The reporter knows she got the gold she needed now, and they end the interview. I thought it was interesting visually when they got up from the interview that the Siegels are actually framed between these poles looking like they were in prison bars. I don't know if that's some sort of foreshadowing, but we'll see. Now, Whitney knows this is going to kill their image, and she reveals that no one even really knew about her ties. It's not even on Google yet to her parents. So she suggests Asher to offer this casino gaming board story as a trade. And while this is happening, they're shooting footage of Fernando's first day working at the coffee shop, but there's a bunch of Aussies working there, and the owner's like, oh yeah, it's just a branding thing, because Whitney's concerned because they're supposed to have all locals there. It's not a good look. Now, they come to an agreement, Asher and Whitney, that they need to talk to this reporter and make some kind of deal. Now, the best is when they're on their way to film the next scene that they're like, we need to make a pit stop, and I love when Asher actually leans over the chair to ask Dougie to make the pick stop and is more forceful about it. And that was definitely improvised by Nathan Fielder, because Benny Safdie definitely broke here and started giggling because he probably didn't expect that. And I don't blame him, because if Nathan Fielder came in your face like that, you would start laughing too. It's also amazing how off socially Asher is, and they highlight that so subtly, and a great job doing this in a scene when he goes to call the reporter. He's opening with the story about the casino, and he has this thing that he could trade with her, but she has to bring up the part about him lashing out at her and him acknowledging that and him then apologizing now. And you also see that Asher wants Whitney to come with him to Subway because he's like her pet. He takes orders from her and he really struggles doing things on his own. And it's so funny. She's like, make sure this doesn't affect the tribe when they're talking about the casino story. She's like, the casino is sacred. And she's like, you're a good person, talking to Asher. And Asher's like, you give me the strength to do anything. Oh man, you just roll your eyes. And throughout this episode, in these moments, you're seeing Dougie's trying to film it, and then Whitney's like, please don't. So while they're waiting for the reporter, Dougie's like, let's get footage of you giving that girl money to look good. He only has 100 Asher. And you knew at that moment, knowing this is Nathan Fielder, he was going to take that money back. And I love when he does. The girl's like, you can't do that or I'll curse you. And he's like, you'll what? And she's like, I curse you. That's the bomb drop of the episode that's going to get everything in motion about the show. And then you're like, okay, now I know why this is titled The Curse. And I love when he tells the family to wait. He's going to get cash. When he goes to the ATM, there's a fee of $3.50. So that stops him when he really should just got the cash. And then the machine doesn't work. Of course, he doesn't trust the guy with his pin who's trying to just help him get cash out. So this is the subtle racism here. And I love this gets payoff later when he's in the car. He's actually calling the bank to change his pin. And it took him so long that this family's now gone. And things just get crazier for Asher here, because when he goes to Subway to meet with the reporter, he gives her some of the casino story. He's like, you can't ruin our commitment to this community. And she calls him out and says, the coffee place is a sponsor of the show, and it's only a 6-month lease. So she's like, how is that commitment? So he loses his cool again here. And he has a great line to her. He's like, do you want to be on the anchor desk or keep driving around a van with that fat guy? And while this is happening, Dougie is outside desperately trying to get audio of this. But the reporter is convinced in a way, because she's like, we'll hold the footage till Tuesday if you can get documents or videos of this casino story. And of course, at this moment, he still backtracks and is like, but wait, don't mention the tribe being part of this. And then, of course, when they're in the car talking about this, Whitney jokes about keeping the good footage of the interview. And she says she's only kidding, but there's a part of her that was kind of serious. And I love the obvious foreshadowing they're doing on purpose, where they show the wrong way sign. I thought that was hysterical. Now, my favorite sequence of this whole episode, and possibly my favorite comedic sequence in years, was when we meet Whitney's family. Now, you actually see that Whitney is having her family do the Jewish traditions for Asher. That's why the mom's like, do I get a costume too? Now, what I didn't catch until second watch is the dad throwing a tiny carrot on the plate, alluding to Asher's small penis. So this is setting up that whole gag here. And that's why it cuts to Asher and his penis when he's peeing, because when you first watch it, you're like, why are they opening a shot with that? So the best moment in this whole episode is at night when the dad gives Asher tomatoes and he informs him he pisses in the soil while he's eating them. And then he takes him to the tomato garden. He's like, let's see how the magic happens. And immediately you hear this horror music playing, which was perfect. And he talks about the big tomatoes and the little tomatoes. And he says, once you put it in between the bread, talking about the cherry tomatoes, it's all the same. And he winks at him. So good. And he goes, now if you don't mind, they're due and so am I. And he starts peeing on the soil, of course. And he's like, embrace it. You say it once to a complete stranger. Hello, I have a small penis. And Nathan Field's reactions to this is priceless, just looking the other way. And Paul says, I know Whitney, and I can tell you 100% she has no issue with her size. And he says, Asher, I've loved you like $1,000,000. Look at what I'm working with here. And then we see Paul's penis. I lost it here. I couldn't breathe how hard I was laughing at this whole scene. And the funniest line of the episode is when he says, be the clown. It's the most liberating thing in the world. It's like effing with a 10-inch cock. I was just on the floor. Seriously, I was crying my eyes out during this whole sequence. And he calls them the Cherry Tomato Boys. This is gold. And Corbin Burnson, who plays Paul, deserves an Emmy for this whole scene. Absolutely incredible. I'll never forget how funny this was to me. And how it's just in the middle of the episode stuck in there, which I thought was great too. Like, I did not expect it coming. And then Asher confronts Whitney in the car about all this. And she informs him she told them about not having sex. But we learn it's actually her she put on the brakes. And then Asher goes, in case you're wondering, your dad's dick is way smaller than mine. That was great. And of course, they live in an invisible home, this passive home themselves. And this is another joke that's set up that's great, where there's no chicken in the chicken penny. So he will obviously call for that refund in a moment when he should really be focusing on looking for that girl. And then here they get it on, but do they really? Because it's with a vibrator, and she's saying Steven. So is she just named the vibrator Steven? Does this represent a real Steven? So I'd love to hear your guys' theories on that. Now, when they're all watching the footage back, Dougie is frustrated. They want to cut so much to make themselves look good, but he wants the real juice. So Dougie also wants to prove himself, and then he plays the show he did, which was a bachelor show with a burn victim. And it's so cringe because the song they use is The Fire Burns On, and they named it Love to the Third Degree. Just insanity. So you're just learning more and more how insane Dougie actually is. And then they play the full footage of Asher with the little girl. And this reveals that he kept it recording, and then of course Dougie blames the crew about this. But you see Whitney takes the cursing that the girl did very seriously. She's like, go find her and give her the money. Now, he finds this shelter, sees they only have funding for 3 nights a week. He's like, we could use donations. This is a clear thing that someone would do as an opening to like, yeah, donate here. This is actually something that will help the community. Is Asher thinking that? Who knows with Asher? But he gives 100 to a woman with her baby there. But it's also part of him feeling like he did something good because he's about to lie to Whitney that he found the girl. And what's also happening at the same time is Dougie's completely throwing Asher under the bus to Whitney. And it's an interesting line. He says, we never thought Asher would be a part of something like this that required so much empathy on his part. So his lack of empathy is really highlighted, even to the point where Dougie realizes that, and that Whitney knows that, and then he comes on to Whitney. So he's also a creep. And then Asher lies to Whitney's face here, says he gave the money, there's no curse, and she believes him. But while this is happening, someone is watching them through the peephole, and it slowly closes in a close-up on Asher. To me, you're just seeing a complete sociopath there who just lied through his teeth about that whole incident of the curse being resolved. This is what he does. And it's going to be interesting to see that part of the character study of that character of Asher and Whitney too, and how much she's going to enable in him. And she's definitely more likable, but she still does a lot of things she turns an eye to. So it's just a really fascinating concept they're doing with this. And if we'll see if there's actually really a curse, or if there's some other curse that's symbolically meaning in their life, we'll see. But I'm giving this premiere a 9.7. I thought it was so good, and I don't like to say brilliant that much, but to me this was brilliant already. But that's not surprising with someone like Nathan Fielder behind the scenes. He's a genius, and it's amazing to see him with Emma Stone. I mean, Emma Stone is an incredible actress, so I love she's doing this. So I mean, what more can you want than Nathan Fielder and Emma Stone together? It makes me very excited for the whole season. I can't wait. And honestly, that sequence with the father-in-law to me was, I'm not kidding when I tell you I was on the floor just crying my eyes out. I don't remember last time I did that. So it's great to see great comedy like that as well. Let me know what you thought down below of the episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond as many as I can. And hit that sub button so you don't miss one of my reviews of the show. And I'll see you next time.